Lovely to have you here. Welcome to the Electro Revolution channel. My name is Michael and I'm a car and tech enthusiast. In this episode, which is episode 2 of our road trip series between Sydney and Melbourne, Victoria, over 830 kilometres all up, what we're going through is the actual charging stops and how the trip went. So if you haven't watched the first episode, which is up here, I invite you to go watch that episode. In that particular one, we visited a Tesla 20 stall charging station in Goulburn, which is the one that's the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere, where I did charge the BYD Seal Premium. And then we also visited the Evie charger in Tarcutta. That was in episode 1. In this particular episode, we're visiting the BP Pulse in Glenrowan South, which is also part of Victoria at this stage. And then we take that final trip to Melbourne. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. And by the way, we do cover the full statistics of this one-way trip at the end of this episode. We have other episodes for the return trip where you'll be interested to know I actually bumped into a BYD battery bus on the trip back. First time I experienced it, and it was actually a fluke that I met the guy there at the charging station. Nevertheless, I'll leave that to those episodes. I hope you enjoy this one. And now we come to our third charging stop on our trip. This will be our last one before we enter actually Melbourne. And what we see here, this is a 150 kilowatt charger. But when I actually got here, it said the maximum peak, as you can see there, is 125. And with the car now sitting on 58%, and the price, of course, is 75 cents per kilowatt. So it's still reasonable for this particular trip. And it's right near McDonald's. So it's got some amenities we can go to. Now to get here, we did actually take a couple of short breaks. Took us just an extra half hour or 40 minutes just to get here. But this is the site here. A lot of car parks, that's for sure. But overall, a nice site. So just to see quickly how long this will take. There we are. That's actually the figure I should be looking at. It's charging at 120 kilowatt. At 61%. And that's what it's ingested so far. So let's take a look quickly at then the instrument display of the vehicle. I can't exactly say for sure why it's actually darker than what it should be. I did set the instrument display console to be 100%, and it is normally a lot brighter than that, but maybe because of the sun, there's some auto configuration there that makes it still dim out. But what we see here, it's 11:20 a.m. It's charging. On the left, it says the charging power is 119.6, so just like the BP Pulse charging station, 120 kilowatt. And it says here remaining 42 minutes to get to 100%. Now, I think I will actually charge it to 100%. So we see how we go here. But as you can see, the most important thing is it's charging at 120 kilowatt. Now, this car is capable of 150 kilowatts. But looks like this charging system is only capable of 120. Now I did set up in the plan before I'd left at 2:30 this morning, all the super fast chargers. So I did expect this to be at least 150 at the very minimum. And this is the console of the BYD, just showing us where we are. Now, one other thing I would say is during this trip, the vehicle itself has got thousands and thousands and thousands of bugs squashed on it. If you can see there, the bugs are dead, squashed all over it, crawling all over it. So the vehicle definitely needs a wash. It's like glue once the bugs stick onto the vehicle or die onto the vehicle. But that's because we're doing speeds of 110 as we're traveling. And of course they get squashed. But it's starting to look like a cake. But that's what you get, I guess, as an expectation of a trip like this. So what we see from here, $28 or $29, 37-minute charge, 41 kilowatt and 100%. Again, it's a little bit dim, but what we're looking at now is 11:56 a.m. and I have had the vehicle on economy mode the entire time. It's using 1 kilowatt at the moment because of the air conditioning, but we see there that we've got 100% charge, 627 kilometers in dynamic mode, which means it's assuming that distance traveled, and the trip A is now 214. So I'll zero that for our last leg of the journey, straight to Melbourne. So far so good, and 33 degrees Celsius, so it's getting to be quite hot today, which is great. So today we arrived at the Melbourne Showgrounds, which was hosting the EV show. Now it says, of course, 5:32 p.m, but that's obviously we've just finished the show. But nevertheless, just for context, the trip A says 231.1 kilometers, and that was from our last charging stop. So in total, what we traveled, if we just look at trip B, is 831.6 kilometers today. So quite eventful.
Now let's go through the details of the actual trip that we took. So as I said, it's broken up into 3 stops, and I've put the table up. And what we can see is the first row is the Tesla 300 kilowatt supercharger site at Goulburn. Now what we can see from that is we traveled from home, my home of course, to Goulburn at 167.2 kilometers or 103 miles approximately. The charge at the Tesla site was 74 cents per kilowatt hour. Now that is the charge that I get as a non-member driving a non-Tesla. If you actually drive a Tesla, you do get it much cheaper. I think it was 48 cents per kilowatt hour. Or if you pay there $10 a month, you can get it also for the 48 cents if you're a non-Tesla driver. But nevertheless, this was a trip I tested on this particular Tesla supercharging site. Again, the first time I tested it with the BYD Premium 2024 model, the BYD Seal Premium. And what we see there also is the charge added in the kilowatts. So I added 36.328 kilowatts of charge. It took 36 minutes and it cost me $26.88. The next charging stop we went to was the one in Tarcutta, which is the EV one located at the Ampol service station. Now that one's got 350 kilowatt charges. Now it doesn't really matter between 300 kilowatt and 350 kilowatt in my case, because the BYD Seal Premium only does 150 kilowatt max. But what we can see from here is the distance traveled between the Tesla and the EV charging site was 219.2 kilometers or 136 miles. Now look at that charge, the kilowatts for the cents there. It's 85 cents per kilowatt hour. Now Evie are known to be the most expensive charging network in Australia, unfortunately, because they do have a very good fast charging network on the main highways, but unfortunately they cost you an arm and a leg. So the charge added was 42.297 kilowatts. The charge time took 39 minutes and the charge price was $35.95. And then we went on to our third charging stop at the BP Pulse, which is 150 kilowatts. Now what we saw there is between the EV charger site and the BP Pulse site was 214 kilometers traveled, 133 miles at 75 cents per kilowatt hour. What was ingested into the battery was 41.764 kilowatts. It took 37 minutes and that also cost $28.81. So what we're looking at here for the subtotals is number one, the distance traveled, 600 kilometers between all of those charging stops. Now, of course, to get to Melbourne, that totaled 831 kilometers between the BP Pulse and the Melbourne Showgrounds. The average price I paid on those 3 stops is 78 cents per kilowatt. The charge added to the battery was 120 kilowatts. Now you've got to remember it's an 82 kilowatt battery that's on the BYD Seal Premium. And I thought this time round I'd actually include the consumption, which actually isn't what I expected. I expected it to be 14 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, but I actually got 20.05 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Now, I'm suggesting there that because I traveled most of the time at 110 kilometers, likely it took more battery. And of course, when you're traveling uphill and downhill and those types of things, you do have the regenerative battery for the downhills, but mostly on the uphills, it uses more battery. Now what we see there, the total charging time was 1 hour and 52 minutes, so almost 2 hours added to the trip just for charging. And the charging cost all up is $117.64. Now, if you compare that to the last time I did a similar trip, I'll put that table up now, and I'll just quickly review this table. If you remember, this was the trip from Sydney to Phillip Island, where I used a slower NRMA 50 kilowatt charger, and you can see there, to charge 49 kilowatts, it was literally $30. For the Evie 150 kilowatt charging system, we see there $45. And for the BP 75 kilowatt charging system there, we see $14.75. Now, what I want to point out here is the subtotals. Look at the distance traveled, 959 kilometers. It was for $89. So even though the charging system was slower, it actually saves quite a bit of money when you do use the slower chargers just based off the price. Nevertheless, I hope that's a good comparison on the trip from Sydney to Melbourne that we took late last year. So that was the end of episode 2. You know, these types of videos are one of the reasons I actually started this channel. I actually love road trips and I love them in vehicle. You know, I can do flights, of course, and things like that, but I actually love road trips. So I really hope you enjoyed this particular video. That was the first 2 episodes on the trip up from Sydney to Melbourne, covering over 830 kilometers all up. I hope you enjoyed the statistics. As you could see, they were different from the previous statistics for the Sydney to Phillip Island trip, which was over 900 kilometers, yet a cheaper trip. On the next series of episodes, what we're going to do is the trip back from Melbourne to Sydney. And as a little hint, as I've mentioned before, we did bump into a BYD battery bus. Again, the first time I ever seen a thing like this, and the gentleman was nice enough to have me film it and have a discussion with him, which I can't really include in the video, but I can include the bus. So I hope you enjoy those episodes on the return trip. Until then, bye for now.